This is my 6th year bullet journaling, and I have tried a lot of tips and tricks with my journals, but one thing I've never tried before is a square notebook. Tiefossi sent me one in the mail, and I'm so excited to unbox it with you guys. Thank you to Tiefossi for sponsoring today's video. This video is an experiment for both you, the viewer, and I. I haven't opened this box yet. I've never made a spread in a square notebook before, so literally real time on camera, we're gonna try to figure out the different dimensions and kind of see what we come up with. But first, let me grab my little baby scissors and we can unbox this new notebook together. These scissors are super cute with like the gold filigree, but genuinely they are so useless for cutting anything except for tiny little bits of paper because they are so small. There you go. On this little card in the package, you can already see a little snippet of what the design is going to be, but let's take out the box itself. I'm actually obsessed with the packaging. These trees are so pretty on the box. Using these scissors, take two. Ooh, there's those gold edges. You can already kind of see the color here, but when I pull out the notebook in 3, 2, 1, this is insane to me, mostly because I'm not used to holding my hands so far apart when I'm holding a journal. But let's look at this design first. This is the 8x8 square crane dot grid notebook in the color green by Tiefossi. The design on the front kind of matches the tree emblem on the packaging, and I love this crane. It's so pretty. And we have like the quilted lines going across this faux leather cover. On the back, there is also a miniature crane design, which I think is very original to Tiefossi. Not many journal companies have a design on the back of their notebooks as well. And like I said, we do have those gold foiled edges that are really shiny. It might even come across too bright on camera, but trust me, it is a very rich and beautiful gold. Pen loop and elastic enclosure as per usual. Let's open this thing up if I can fit the whole thing on the screen. In the very front page, we have a thank you note from Tiefossi as usual. A little spread for you to write your name for the book. And then we get into the dot grid pages. This is so crazy to me because the book is so wide. I mean, the book page itself is 8x8 but then when you multiply it by 2, it's like this is 1.5 feet almost all the way across. Together, we're going to figure out how this journal works. There are also 2 elastic enclosures as per usual. This rich green is super pretty and it's a nice contrast with the olivey tone of the cover. There is a back pocket as per usual, and this one is bigger, so you can probably store a lot larger contents in here, whether that's like stickers, washi tape, strips, ephemera, things like that. And because this journal is wider, it's not as thick, so there are 160 pages instead of the usual 190, but again, there's a lot more space every spread, so that might be a good thing that there's less pages. Cracking open to a very random page in the center of the journal just to keep it mostly flat. Like I said, this is an experiment for both you and I. I'm really not used to this size at all, and so I had very little plan going into filming this video. I think what I want to do first is try to figure out a grid spacing sheet on one side because those are always helpful when determining the size of a new notebook. If you're confused when I say grid spacing sheet, here is an example in one of my older bullet journals that is an A5 size. So basically, I divide the spreads by halves and quarters, both horizontally and vertically. That way I know how many dots there are on the spread and how many dots I need to count when I'm separating the spread into different sections in later spreads in my bullet journal. I do have an entire video tutorial for making a grid spacing sheet already on my channel. If you're interested, I will link it down below. But because I am doing so on a completely different size notebook here, I'm kind of just gonna start and see what happens. It may be a dumb idea to use a pen for this because if I make a mistake, like, oh well, but I want you to be able to see it. And I feel like pencil sometimes can get a little light. I also have my ruler for reference here because just to double check, this is a 5mm dot grid, which means that every 2 dots is a centimeter. And I'm measuring 18.5 centimeters, which means that there should be 37 spaces all the way across if I can do mental math properly. And then vertically, there are exactly 18 centimeters, which is 36 dot grid. But the first step in any of my grid spacing cheat sheets is double check that by literally writing the numbers down vertically and horizontally. So let's do that first. Obviously, my mental math is on point because this was 37 spaces across and 36 spaces down. Just to clarify, because this can get a little confusing, 37 spaces means that there's actually 38 dots because I'm counting the space in between the dots. And similarly for vertically, there are 37 dots and 36 spaces. But that being said, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. Now, to compare to my A5 journal on the right, this one is 38 spaces down, so it's just slightly taller than this as far as dot grid, but it is 26 spaces across, so that ends right about here. So this spread has 11 extra spaces over here towards the margin that an A5 spread does not have. So if you like this new, almost perfectly square layout with just a teensy bit more room, actually honestly quite a bit more room in the spread, especially if you have like big handwriting or something, I can see how that would be very beneficial. But do keep in mind, it isn't an exact perfect square because it's 37 and 36. I believe that's because they have the page numbers at the bottom here, so they have to raise the dot grid just slightly to make room for that, but that doesn't matter. All things considered, this is basically a perfect square spread. Now, as far as dividing it into halves, thirds, and quarters, 37 makes it a little difficult because it doesn't divide evenly in half, but I will just do a halfway point in the middle of this 19 box so you can visualize what splitting the spread literally in two exact halves could look like. Horizontally though, it is much easier because 36 divided by 2 is perfectly even at 18. And I'll put my little label up here as well so we know exactly what this measurement is. And again, I have an entire setup for my grid spacing cheat sheet on a different video, so I'm not really going to talk too much through the rest of this process, but let me kind of speed through making the remainder of this grid spacing sheet and then we will see my thoughts after that. All right, so my grid spacing sheet is finished. As you can see, I have just my little usual title in the bottom right corner to save up this extra space. Now, my thoughts on this as a whole. Like I said a moment ago, because this spread is almost the exact same height as most normal A5 bullet journals, height-wise, the dimensions are split almost at the exact same point. Sometimes they're a little bit off, but it's really close. So hypothetically, when you're dividing a spread vertically, it won't look much different than it does in an A5 journal. The difference comes in horizontally because these chunks are much larger than these chunks here. This is 19 across to the halfway point. This is 13 across to the halfway point. So if you were to divide a spread, for example, vertically by 7, if you were making like a vertical calendar, it would look the same as it does in this spread. But if you were to divide it evenly across in a horizontal calendar, the boxes would be way wider than they are in this spread if you took up the same proportion of space on this page as you would in a page in this journal. Am I making any sense here? Okay, so for example, let's look at my spread here in January of last year. This was my calendar page that I made pretty small on this, skinny little page on the left. But if I was to recreate this spread on a page like this, because the vertical spaces are the exact same, it would probably be the same height for every box. But because there's more room horizontally, if I was to elongate this box to fit almost the entire spread, I would have much more room to write in every box horizontally. I feel like there would be a little bit of getting used to kind of rework your brain for a spread like this, because most of the spreads that we see inspiration-wise are in this kind of ratio, not in this elongated ratio. But again, bigger handwriting, if you have more to write down itself, if you like huge pieces of artwork, you could really benefit from a journal like this that just gives you that little bit more space. Okay, so for the right side of this spread, I want to make a more bullet journal focused page, not something for reference like this, but something that you would actually use on a daily basis in your bullet journal. So for example, I'm covering up the numbers here at the bottom of a very used expenses tracker, but in this spread that I used last May, I have one big spread with my gratitude / daily log, an expenses tracker, and then 6 habit trackers trackers on the top. And I also have a lot of space in the middle, of course, for my little scrapbooking. Now I think, and this is like not for sure yet, but I believe that I can fit all of these elements on one spread in this journal. In fact, one page, not one full spread, but one half page in this journal because it is so much bigger. So we're gonna put that to the test right now and see if I can fit all 3 elements almost in like a monthly dashboard sort of feel. And this ruler and grid spacing sheet is going to stay very handy. So let's start with organizing everything, and I am going to use a pencil for this part just in case I make a grave error. So thinking for the month of July, there are 31 days in July. So if I was going to do a daily log like I had with the stripes on my original page, I'm going to need to use 31 lines, right? If I subtract 31 from 36, I have 5 spaces left, and I do like to have space for a title at the top of mostly everything that I do. So I think I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there. Double checking with my ruler to 15 and a half. Yes, this is 15 and a half spaces all the way down, which in my mind is 31 lines that I can make for a gratitude log where I have 1 line for every day. Because I'm going to be fitting a lot of things in, oh my gosh, there's an ant. Look at that. Eek. Go away. Anyway, because I'm going to be squishing so many different elements into this one spread, I do want to use as little margin space as possible. So I'm only going to do 1 block in from the left, and I'll maybe just estimate to like here. This is literally just like an eyeball width. It doesn't really matter how thick the gratitude log is, as long as you have enough space on every line to write something down that's quite small. Coming over here to the bottom right, I know I haven't actually done anything here yet, but we're going to wait a second before I use hard markers or ink pens. I'm going to try to make another small box in the right for my expenses tracker. Now this box right here is this wide, and so if I have 1 space in from the edge, I'm going to do a 2 space margin before I start this box, and then I'll bring it all the way across and come 1 space in from the right to make sure that everything is centered on the page. I know this seems very like calculating measurements, mathematical, but if you guys ask me why my spreads are usually very evenly distributed or evenly laid out, it's because I'm doing this mental math in my head as I'm designing the spreads. So if you kind of hear my thought process, it might help you when you're making your own spreads on your own. I want them to be at the same height, so I'm going to bring this box all the way down to the bottom of the page, and then I'm just going to guesstimate somewhere around here will be where I want to end this expenses tracker and make it take up that much space. But before I do anything specific here, let's look at the habit trackers that I had at the top of the spread in my first page in May. Now, habit trackers are more specific about their sizing because you need a calendar. Well, you don't need a calendar, but I usually do a calendar where I will count in every day whether or not I completed a habit. So for example, if I start here, because again, we're doing 2 spaces in, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then let me come over here and count in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces in between what would hypothetically be 2 different calendars here. Now, personally for me, that is a lot of room that I don't need to keep empty. So what I'm thinking is, let me move this second habit tracker closer on the left. So I will erase these 2 tick marks, and I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. And I don't have room for a third one on the right, but I might just leave that spot a little empty for some decoration a little later. Now, for every habit tracker, I like to have a box at the top just to kind of label what the habit is, and then I can draw the calendar below it. So July this year starts on a Tuesday, so I will leave that Monday spot blank. I'll go down 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then it ends on a Thursday, so I'll count 4 spots over, and there is my calendar for the month of July, and I will just replicate that right here as well. So this is 2 habit trackers that I can use. I'm going to try to see if I can fit 2 more right below it if we really try to squeeze this in. So if I keep 2 dots of margin space, just like I've been doing for every other gap in the spread, and then I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the issue comes up where the habit tracker butts into the top of my expenses log. So then I'm gonna think to myself, which is more important here? Is it more important to make my expenses log bigger and have more room for more expenses? Or is it more important to me to have 2 more extra trackers and make my expenses log smaller? It honestly is very much personal preference, which one you need for your own life. Personally, I think I'd rather track 4 habits rather than 2 and just kind of squish my expenses into a smaller chart, because I know that I can very easily condense my expenses whenever I'm writing them down into to a smaller height. So I'm going to create 2 more habit trackers down here that are exact replicas of the one above it. And then I will do 2 spaces down from the bottom of that habit tracker, and that's where I will start my actual expenses log. And that's also why I didn't want to use pen originally, because sometimes whenever you're mapping things out, you have to move some things around and make adjustments to make sure that everything fits on the spread. Now this spot at the top I did leave completely blank, and that was on purpose because I wanted to make some kind of header here. I think I'm gonna make it say monthly dashboard, because essentially this is like a dashboard where you would store all of your tasks, your gratitudes, your expenses for one big month. And it does kind of fit all on one spread, even though it is quite tight. So it is like a one-stop shop for everything you need during the month, besides maybe a calendar, which if we didn't draw the grid spacing sheet over here, I suppose we could have put the calendar over here. And then this last space on the left, I might use for maybe some washi tape decoration. We will see when I finish inking everything in, but while we're at it, let me take out my pen, my calligraphy marker here, and going over all of the pencil lines, and then you'll be able to see the spread much more clearly. I love how the spread is kind of turned into an explosion of like neon yellowy green. It just happened to be the marker that I chose initially, but this is what we got with our finished spread. We have the gratitude log, expenses log, and 4 habit trackers. And to be honest, although I did take this spread originally, which does use a lot more margin space and has room for the scrapbooking in the middle, and kind of shoved it into one half of a spread over here, I genuinely think that this is very functional. You have a little room for art and decoration and some calligraphy, but you have room for productivity too. And just imagine if you could spread this over the full 2 pages, you'd have an entire like half page for art or scrapbooking or whatever kind of design you wanted to add to your bullet journaling spreads. Or like I said, you could do a calendar over here, you could do a cover page, you could do an academic planner that takes up literally the entire spread and gives you so much room to write. I think that it does take a little bit of a learning curve to get used to these new proportions, but if you like them, it really does give you so much more room than you think it does. So I'm quite happy with this. If you would like more videos of me trying to make spreads in a square notebook, comment down below and let me know, and maybe I'll make a part 2. And as always, thank you to tiefossi for sponsoring this video and sending me one of your journals to test out today. If you're interested in checking out tiefossi, getting one of these square notebooks for yourself in these beautiful crane designs, I think this is genuinely so stunning. I will have the link down below along with my code MINGO to get some money off of your order. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss my newest upload next Saturday, which is literally in just a couple days, by the way. This is like a half-week upload, so I hope you guys are excited for that new video. And I will link my July plan with me here on the screen in case you missed it. Love you guys so much and have an amazing rest of your week. I'll see you Saturday.